Rev up your engines! All right, today we're talking about ABS problems. This is a 94 Pontiac. The guy got a good deal on it. He only paid $3 grand for it with like 60,000 miles. Although he bought it from a guy in Michigan, they only had a short time. It's a Southern car, so it's not all rotted out. If you find one of these up north, you're gonna find the whole car's rotted out. This one is not. And as you can see on the hubcaps, they brag about ABS. There's the ABS, but realize one thing. They had a lot of recalls. They recalled 3.5 million GM products because the ABS systems didn't work all that well. As we'll look under the hood, one for such an old car, man, it's clean under the hood. Let me tell you, you don't see this in Rhode Island cars. Normally, all the aluminum's going to be pitted. You can tell this was a Southern car. But we'll go over here to the ABS system. And if you look at this, it's a pretty funky looking system. It is not like the modern ABS systems. And that's the reason that they recalled over 3.5 million of these in one recall alone. They recalled even more. ABS is supposed to stop your car from locking the wheels up. Anti-lock braking, that's what it does. These were anti-lock braking, but they were too anti-stop braking. A lot of them, 60-mile-an-hour stopping, they had a 50-foot longer distance because it made the system weaker. It was a crappy system. They had a lot of suits. Some people were killed. They blamed it on it, and then they had all kinds of lawsuits going on. This particular system isn't that good. Now, his light comes on, goes off. He's replaced the sensors on him, but he hits bumps. The lights go on, they go off. They're known for that. Now, he doesn't really have any problems braking the car, and his advantage is, even this car's in Rhode Island, it's a 94. So it's old enough in Rhode Island and it doesn't need those inspections every year. So it doesn't have to worry about that, but we're going to put my machine on and check out the ABS system. Now, the other problem he's having, idling a bit too high, so we're going to put on the computer and we're going to check both the idling and the ABS system to see what's going on. Now, like I say, they're not very good ABS systems. He's not having problems braking or anything, but the stupid light tends to come on and off. So let's hook up the scan tool. But in this case, it's a 94, so it's OBD1. So the OBD scan tool, it's not going to work. So we got to get the adapter. So we'll plug it into the OBD1 port. That in this case is still under the dash right here. Now we'll turn the key on and let it run its thing. Now you get a lot less information on OBD1. There's no arguing that. So the ABS is pretty much a basic system, and the system or the analysis of the fuel injection ignition system, that's pretty basic too. But we'll at least see if there's any generic codes. It's a Grand Prix. When we go to the data here, you can see there aren't any codes, which is kind of typical on these systems, to tell you the truth. But let's start it up. And you can see by the spark plug wire bouncing around a little. It's got a little uneven idle. And you can see it does take a little time for it to idle back down. It stays high a little bit too long. Now, just because a car's modern, doesn't have a carburetor, everything's electronic, you still have to do stuff. And in this case, I don't know if the throttle's ever even been cleaned in this thing. So let's look at it. So I'll loosen the clamps. The air filter's here, throttle's here, mass airflow sensor's here. We'll look at the throttle. We'll wiggle it off. Wiggle the other end off. Good thing it's rubber. Well, we can look inside, but lo and behold, he said he had cleaned it before. It's squeaky clean. There's nothing wrong with it. You can see when we open it up, it's all shiny. It's not dirty. There's nothing wrong with that. And occasionally stick, do stuff like that, but it's clean. That's not the problem. So we'll put that back on. Now make sure you get the clamps nice and tight, because you don't want any air leaks. Now he says that the ABS acts often when he hits bumps. So we're going to do what's called a wiggle test. A lot of times these old wiring harnesses go bad. You wiggle them. Well, wiggling doesn't do anything. So since you get such limited data from one of these things, let's look at the spark plugs. We'll see what they look like. So we'll wiggle this around a little. We'll look at some of the spark plugs. We'll get a deep socket, long extensions. Now the first thing you'll see, there's oil. But the oil is because the spark plug tube seal's leaking. It needs new gaskets and seals. That's only on the end of here because it's dripped down the whole thing. It's not like the engine's burning it. It just needs new spark plug tube seals. But once we rub the oil out, you look at the spark plug, it's running totally normal. It's the right color, kind of tannish. There's no real burning debris on it. It's not really burning any oil. We'll look at the other two. I'll do the second one. Again, the spark plug tube seal is leaking on that one too. But you can always tell because the top is wet. If the top was dry, but the bottom was wet, it'd mean it's burning oil because it's inside the engine. But this is only the outside, and then it drips on here. And just like the other one, it's a clean plug. Doesn't have any real problems. And we'll do the number 3. Same thing. It's wet because it needs spark plug tube seals done. But the plug itself is burning fine. The engine itself is fine. And it's not running either rich or lean. Let's take it for a spin. Because as old as it is 94, it sure looks good. Modern space age door handles. Like something Elon would do. Now it is a Grand Prix. So it's pretty stylish inside. The leather, I mean, it's all in pretty good shape still. I mean, no backup camera on this thing, you know. It's got AM, FM radio with cassette deck. Ooh. I'm so old, I remember the year that cassettes outsold records. That was a big deal. Long before even CDs, if you know what they are. This might be an old car, but check it out. Look what it's got. Windshield speedometer. Now, it's pretty low to the ground, so I'm going over the bump slow. And it's raining, so I'm turning on a defrost and AC, and guess what? The AC still works in this thing. Sometimes the ABS light comes on, he says. There weren't any codes. It's not doing it now, but let's see what happens when we slam on the brakes. It still works. They're not locking up and the road's wet. We'll try it again. Yep, it still works. So the light comes on every once in a while. Realize this is in Rhode Island. It's an older car and it's exempt from inspections. So you're just going to live with that. Like I said, he changed the sensors. And it still comes on every once in a while. But there's no codes, and you don't expect much codes on an old 94. OBD1 is not a very good diagnostic system. Now it's got a tiny bit of a shake at idle, but it's nothing outrageous. And this is a V6 engine, so we'll get out here and we'll punch it. It's a Pontiac. It's got some guts left in it. Still got a decent engine. It handles quite well. Still steers great with your hand off the wheel. Nice and responsive. Great, for $3,000 that he paid for this car with 60,000 miles, not a bad deal at all. Transmission, when you're floored, kicks into passing gear, downshift smooth. This thing's in excellent shape. And really, so what? If the ABS light comes on once in a while, realize it's a fail-safe system. If the ABS system on this old clunker breaks, it reverts to non-ABS braking. The brakes don't stop working, you just lose the anti-lock capability. And I keep slamming on the brakes there and it's still working, so what the heck. And yeah, the idle is a little bit choppy. You can barely see the RPM needle moving. And yeah, when you're doing tight turns, you can hear a little groaning in the power steering, just a little. Pretty typical when they're this old. Still works perfectly fine, it doesn't leak. Now realize these old GMs didn't have the technology of the modern ones. It was the higher technology, weak transmissions that knocked Pontiac out of the ballpark, and they don't make cars anymore. These older ones, like this 94, they were pretty solid built. And now they had good engines, the transmissions are pretty good. The later model ones, forget it. I would take this hands down over one that was 10 or 15 years newer than this, because then Pontiac was making junk, and that's one of the reasons they don't exist anymore. They were garbage, but these old ones, hey, step on the gas, they go. Just realize it's only got 65,000 miles on it. It shouldn't be worn out, but you can find one like this, no rust. Hey, not a bad deal at all in today's market. All in all, this is still a really fun car to drive around. That's what Pontiacs were known for. GM just drove them into the ground with too much poorly designed and poorly built technology. These older ones, hey, they're a lot of fun to drive around. And when you look at it, it is still one sharp car. Hey, this was a 94. Remember, way back in 94. Cool kind of slanted headlights in it. The rims are still in decent shape. The spoiler's still got the paint on it. And he was smart turning it into an antique car, so everything's cheaper. The insurance doesn't need inspections. Realize it's a somewhat light car. It's a 94, right? With all that power. If he cruises the speed limit 65, he can get 30 miles a gallon in this thing. People don't realize that with all the modern technology, a lot of gasoline cars really don't get much better gas mileage than they ever did. If you remember the one I did on Toyota, my old Celica gets like 31 miles a gallon on a highway. And I've seen the new Toyotas maybe they get 35. All those years and only 4 miles a gallon better. The thing is, they went for horsepower. The new ones have 100-something horsepower more than my Celica did. They went more for power than they did gas mileage. Well, this is power and pretty good gas mileage. You drive it conservatively and they got a little baby. Are you talking about a baby seat in the back? Hey, a great car for $3,000. You can't argue that. And listen to me. This was a Southern car. If you're in Michigan, Alaska, Rhode Island, somebody selling a used one that was a local car, jack it up, go under it. If the frame's rotten, realize these are not body-on-frame cars. These are unibody. Once the frame starts to rot, it's time to say goodbye. So you don't want to buy a rotted one. But you find one like this with 64,000 miles, buy it, regardless. Maybe you want to get rid of it. You could double or triple your money today's market if you could get one that cheap and sell it if you didn't like it. I mean, it's still a sharp-looking car. For $3,000, you really can't go wrong with a car like that. Just stay away from buying a used late model Pontiac when they stopped making them the last, say, 4 or 5 years because they were junk. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.